Hello, Patriots, friends, family, viewers from all over the world. Thank you for joining us today for another short video from Sergeant Troy's. Today, our subject is going to be about water. This is kind of an introduction to water. Again, we're talking about the things that we've put into a bug out bag and why. So I'm just going to go over a couple products and kind of give you an idea. When we talk about water, I think what people get a misunderstanding about sometimes is what is the difference between, say, purification, filtration, disinfection, those kinds of things. What I want you to focus on is what do we have to do to take water and make it potable for human consumption? That's really what we need to do. Water can be gathered, but you don't know what's in the water. And you need to make sure that this water is going to fulfill the needs of the human body. I think somewhere around 60% of the body is made up of water. And there's a lot of electrolytes and things that are in the water that we need. When we're under a lot of pressure or under a lot of stress, we sweat, we lose a lot of that water. We lose it every time that we have to go to the bathroom. So you have to make sure that you have safe water to drink. So we're going to talk about the things that we can put in our kits in order to try to make water as safe as we possibly can. Again, I'm going to go back to this 100% cotton cloth, and I'm going to use this as an example about what we're talking about filtering water. Now, if you take water out of a mud puddle somewhere and you put it in here to boil it, you can absolutely boil it. And what that will do is that will kill all the life that's in the water. So biologically, this water is now dead. However, you have things like hard metals, you have pesticides, chemicals, herbicides, you have all those things that are also in the water. When you boil the water, those things don't go away. They're still in the water, along with the things that are in the water that make you sick in the first place. There's three major things that are introduced into the human body that causes problems. And those range in size from as small as a virus, then we go up to bacteria, and then we go up to parasites. And different filtration systems come in different micron sizes to filter out certain things from the water. So at its most basic level, what we're going to be doing is we're going to try to find the cleanest source of water that we can, something that's moving close to the source as possible. We're trying not to get water that's stagnant or water that is of questionable quality to begin with. The less garbage in the water, the less garbage you have to take out of the water. So we can start that by taking our cotton cloth here. We can make several layers of that cotton cloth, and we can set this over our container, whatever it is that we're going to catch our water in. You can pour water into this, and multiple layers of this cotton is going to trap a lot of the big stuff out. Now that's important because depending on how you decide to treat your water to make it potable will determine how you kind of prepare your water prior to that. I don't want to get off in the weeds too much, but I do want you to know that there's a lot of information that needs to be learned about clean water. And at its root, you just need to know that we need safe, healthy drinking water that we can take into our bodies, and we have to treat that water somehow. Typically, people will treat this water with chemicals. That's usually what you get out of your tap water. You use a lot of chlorine. There's other chemicals as well. And what it's designed to do is it will also kill the viruses and the bacteria and the parasites that are in the water. But remember, all those other things are still in the water. So even though you may take a tablet and you're going to treat your water, you still have these other things that you will still be ingesting into your body. Now, let me take a minute and talk about tablets. A lot of people love these tablets. They're simple, easy to use. They come in a sealed container, and usually if they stay sealed, they're good for over a year. Once you open them up, they do begin to oxidize, and so they lose their effectiveness after they've been opened. So always make sure that you keep the lid on tight after you have opened them. Typically, you want to read your instructions, but usually it's 1 to 2 tablets per quart or liter of water, which is kind of why I put our 1 quart container in our bug out bag, because this helps me measure exactly how much water I'm treating and how much water I'm drinking, and how to measure it based on my pills that I have. So if we take this water that we've pulled out of the creek and we put it through several layers of the cotton and we've gotten most of the stuff out, when we pour it into our canteen, if it is clear, then we can say that the water does not have much turbidity. Turbidity is just a fancy word that we use to explain all the particles that are suspended in the water. You want as clear water as you possibly can get. That's why we would pre-filter with our cotton into our container that we're going to treat. treat with our pill. It's important to note that typically these pills are good for clear water, 1 pill, cloudy water, 2 pills. It needs to rest anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. That's also important because if you take this pill, you put it in water and then you drink it, it has not had time to kill everything that's in the water that could make you sick. So you need to remember that. Now, what these pills typically do not do is they don't have any effect on cryptosporidium or giardia initially. And what that means is that if you have ice cold water that you're pulling out of a creek somewhere, the cryptosporidium is inside of a cyst, a little hard shell, and it has to get to a certain temperature before it opens up. And I believe that temperature is around 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Do your research, make sure that you don't always take my word for it, do your own research, but I think that's pretty accurate. Having that in mind, they recommend when you use chemicals to leave it rest for 4 hours. That's because we're trying to get this water up to temp. So if I was going to take dirty water and I was going to put it in here and use this pill, I'm going to pre-filter it, I'm going to put it in here, I'm going to put it out in the sun, I'm going to let it get as warm as it can, and I'm going to allow this thing to sit for 4 hours if I am concerned about cryptosporidium or giardia. What you don't want is you don't want to have to deal with that in a trail, especially in a stressful situation. So you don't want to be losing a lot of fluids unnecessarily. So what a lot of people will do is they will pre-filter their water into a cup and they'll boil the water. Now, once you've boiled the water, what you've done is that you have killed all the viruses and bacteria and parasites that are in the water, but it still has the other things that are left in the water. That's the reason that people go from boiling water to using chemicals to disinfect it, to using some sort of filtration device. Filters work great because basically it's forcing the water to go through an even finer filter mesh, which allows the water to go through a sponge, as it were, and absorb as much of the small particles and remove them from the water. However, you still run the risk of it having the chemicals and things of that nature in them, like the pesticides, herbicides, the heavy metals. So a lot of people will filter their water, and then after that they go through an activated carbon filter. Now, if you're in the wild, what you may choose to do is you may take the coals, the black coals that are left over from your fire, and you may put them inside of your cloth, and you may take the water and pour it through there after it's been purified. And I hesitate to use the word purified because purified basically means you're removing everything from the water except for the water. Kind of like distilled water. We haven't purified any water here. If you distill water, you're going to make it safe to drink, but there's still going to be the possibility of solvents and chemicals that are in that water whenever it's recovered. So purification and filtration and disinfection are 3 different things. You need to know the difference. You need to do what you need to do to make this healthy water for you to drink. I put a couple other products out here just to kind of make you aware of other options that we may have in our pack. One of which is these Espit stoves, which instead of having to sit down and take the time that it takes in order to build a fire, we can use one of these small stoves with heat tabs. And the stove is pretty basic, pretty simple. This is an Espit. You open it up just like this. If you notice, all of these have the fuel tabs inside of it. Inside of this black wrapper is a fuel tab that looks just like this. You put one of these in the center here. You light this thing on fire, and then you can put your stove over the top of it. If you notice that whenever you do this, sometimes these don't sit straight. So don't think in terms of straight. Just kick this thing in a little bit, and now you can set this up here, and you don't have any problem with it sitting. And it'll bring your water to a boil. That's the reason it's important. But you're still using the same thing to heat up a can of soup or anything else. If you notice, there's a little extra room in here. Even though it does have a couple fuel tabs in here, what I want you to think about is you can also, there's room in here for a Bic lighter. Remember, we always talk about, having multiple things in our kits in order to do what we want them to do. So, put you either a set of matches in there or a Bic lighter or whatever in here, and keep this thing as a system into your kit. You don't really need to keep the box, but that's up to you. It does have good instructions on it. Just know that once you've used this thing, that there are tablets that are available. Make sure that you carry extra tabs because these things are great, but once you've opened them up, they do dissolve pretty quickly. Another thing here that we have is we have the Mylar blanket. Now, this one happens to be a poncho. I laid this out kind of hesitantly, but it's another option that I want you guys to think about. If you're in a worst case scenario and you find water and you've pre-filtered it, but you've run out of your chemicals, or you have a lot of time, but you may not have a lot of fuel to build a fire or to sit over a fire, what you can do is you can take one of these survival ponchos or one of these Mylar bags, lay it out in the sun, get some 1-quart freezer bags that have the little zipper seal on them, fill those things up with water and lay them out in the sun. The UV from the sun will sterilize that water in about 6 hours. So if you put this stuff out early of a morning and it sits out all day, by the end of the day, you haven't used any fuel at all. You have clean drinking water. Several of these quart bags don't take up any space. And at the same time, that also works as a passive signal. If someone is flying overhead and you're trying to be located, now you have this shiny thing on the ground. And because the water itself, every time the wind blows or whatever, it's going to give it a little bit of a flash, which is going to be the same as you using your signal mirror to try and get someone's attention. So this is also another option that you might want to consider. One more thing I do want to bring up is this. You know, we talked about these tablets. Some of these tablets will come in a 2 kit. These have a chemical aftertaste, depends on if it's iodine based or chlorine based. Sometimes it tastes like pool water. Sometimes it's worse than that. It may be safe for you to drink, but it may not be very comfortable. So after your 4 hours, and remember after your 4 hours, that's important, then and only then do you use these tabs. If you put these tablets in it after the 4 hours, what will happen is it'll take that nasty taste out of the water and it's a little bit more tolerable. So I would consider taking these. Just be aware that you don't want to add these too quickly because they neutralize the chemical that we've put in the water to disinfect it. Please just be aware of that. Read the instructions, read the directions, follow them closely, and as always, do your own research. Thank you for the time that you take for our videos. We appreciate everything you guys have done for us. We covered some fire earlier today, and now we've covered some water. Give us the feedback. Make sure that if you like this video, you enjoy it, make sure that we get a thumbs up. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you share this video. Make sure that you comment. This is basic information that I think everybody should have, regardless of your situation. These are things you should have in your vehicle. You should be carrying this stuff with you all the time because you never know whenever the help that you provide is not just help for yourself, but it could be a fellow family member or it could be someone that you don't even know, a complete stranger that may not be as prepared as you are. So again, make sure that you reach out and let everybody know our series is going. And if you have questions or comments, or you have topics you'd like for us to cover, just let me know. Thank you again for joining us at Sergeant Troy's.